Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Unconfined Conversations with Ryan and Steve. I'm Ryan, this is Steve, my main man, here for episode 9.
Nueve.
Now you notice we're not using our hands anymore. We're kind of running out of fingers at this point. What we don't want to do, America, is we don't want to subject you to us using our toes anytime soon. I think that might be a little scary for most people. But so we're coming to you from the Unconfined Conversations studio, where, as you can tell from our attire today, it's just a little icy in here, I think, to say the least.
A little brisk.
It's a little brisk, yes, a little brisk. So today, Steve, what we're going to be talking about is something that, we've kind of alluded to a little bit here and there throughout our episodes, but it's definitely something that we want to highlight and to focus on today, and that's really about the importance about education. And, on this platform, we're talking about things that are important with incarceration, post-incarceration, and so we're going to be focusing today on education within the prison system. And there are many forms of education. Today we're going to talk about 4 or 5 of them.
Sure.
And why they're important and how they can help shape the future for some of these men and women who are going to be coming out of prison one day. So I'll just start with asking you this. From your experience and your perspective, what were the forms of education that helped you the most? And I'm not talking about, the expansion of your mind. I'm talking about what helped you to navigate your prison term as far as the types of education that you received, and then how did that translate to you when you got out of prison?
Yeah. I think for me, it was just having people around me that cared for me. It wasn't always in the capacity of like a teacher, Bible teacher, pastor, people like that. But my fellow peers, who were also educated maybe on the outside. They had gotten degrees. They had gotten their high school education. I had only been, I only made it through I would say 8th grade. I started 9th grade and I got half of a credit, and then that was it. And then shortly thereafter, I got my GED. But beyond that, I just kind of fell into this moment where I didn't learn anything. I didn't care, But only until I would say that I had a heart change and I realized, that I'm really ignorant in the grand scheme of things. I really don't have understanding. I don't possess wisdom. And knowledge, I would say, probably was not an important thing for me. But yeah, people, peers.
So maybe before we get into these specific types of education, let's talk just very briefly about the mental space that a person has to be in order to receive these different types of education, right? Because you can have all the different types of education placed right before you on a serving platter. It could be given right in front of you. But if you're not ready to receive it, then it's not going to do any good, is it?
No. Yeah. I talked about a heart change. I think that was kind of an indicator in the right direction. But it also took just knowing the person that was dispensing the knowledge or the wisdom, knowing that they cared, knowing that there's love, care, and concern for me, and there's not an agenda or a motivation other than just, hey, I think this is important to share this with you, so that way it will benefit you in the future, in the role of a father, in the role of an employee, in the role of just being a friend out in society, just understanding hey, this is real life now. This isn't just sitting in a box. And I hate to equate prison to that, but you get the idea. You're out in life functioning every day in a variety of capacities.
So, when we talk about the types of education that are available within the prison system, you and I have seen so many different types of education within prison. And I think one of the ones that's the most readily available, well, really there's two, but we'll talk about one of them first, and that's, academic education. So academic education, what we mean by that is school, textbooks, things like that, right? And one of the most readily available types of academic education within the prison system is maybe one of the most valuable, and that is absolutely the GED class. To get your GED class going is fairly easy. A person simply needs to send in a request slip to say, hey, I'm interested in participating in the GED class. I want to get my GED. So you get put on a list, and then when there's an available opening, you can start your GED class. And it's not something that is, okay, you only have 6 weeks to get your GED, and that's it. They take you through each of the subjects that you need to get your GED, and they have tutors that will work with you one-on-one, and they will help you to get to the point where you can take each specific test within the GED block of tests that can help you to get your full GED. So if you know science or social studies really, really well, then that'll be a breeze. But if you struggle with math, there's somebody there that will help you with math one-on-one. And it's a really wonderful thing.
It's fantastic.
And I think too often, some people are maybe a little intimidated by getting their GED because they've never finished school, or maybe they weren't very good in school, or maybe if you're a little older, it's been so long that you're like, man, I've really forgotten a lot of these things, and I don't want to be embarrassed because I don't know basic math.
Right.
But to be able to get over those fears and participate in that and to get your GED not only can be a sense of accomplishment, which can uplift someone, but coming from an employment standpoint. So this is what my employer told me when I was being recruited through a job fair in the Mike Durfee State Prison. Because I came with my GED. I had gotten my GED before I even went to prison. And he said the difference between me offering you a job and me not offering you a job kind of hinged on you having your GED.
Oh, wow.
Having a GED was the difference in making $5 an hour more or less. And that can be for any type of employment. Construction, service, any of those types of things, especially when it comes to skilled labor.
Right.
Having a GED is so, so important. And employers will often overlook or pass by applicants because they don't have a GED. And getting out of prison, employment is a huge thing.
Oh, yeah.
Not only do you need employment to pay the bills, to put food on your table, but oh, by the way, it's a condition of your parole.
That's right.
And if you don't have a job because you don't have a GED, then you're not going to be able to fulfill that condition of your parole. Now, that doesn't mean there isn't some leniency there, but the struggle bus is going to be a long ride if you don't have your GED. And you and I have seen guys and the difference that it means between having your GED and not having your GED.
Right. I think just circling back around at the intimidation factor, because that's what, that's a struggle of mine. Even today, as I'm talking about further education beyond my GED, specifically something that could help me be in a different pay bracket, I'm intimidated by that, because it has been years since I studied academically, in a systematic format, going from one grade to the next grade to the next grade. So yeah, I can definitely resonate with that though.
Yeah, and it's a big hurdle for a lot of guys and gals too, to be able to overcome that fear and say, you know what, I want my GED, but I'm also going to open myself up to receiving help,
Sure,
and tutoring and all those kind of things, right? So academic education is a huge thing, and the GED program is absolutely one of, at least in our opinion, I think at least, one of the two largest and most important types of education that you can receive within the prison system. The other one, which I think benefited us greatly in not just what we know up here in our minds, but who we became as human beings and who we became as men, is definitely spiritual education.
Absolutely.
I don't think that can be, I mean, that's right up there with academic education as far as importance goes for changing the trajectory of one's life, right? But the difference with spiritual education has to be that it can change who you are as a person. It can evolve you into the type of man or woman that you know that you have to be to better serve yourself and your children and your family and your community. So talk a little bit about the types of spiritual education that are not only available, but the types of spiritual education that benefited you during your time within the prison system.
I was just at a speaking engagement recently, and one of the congregants came up to me afterward, and they made the comment. They said, for only making it through the 8th grade, you speak as though you're educated. And I received the compliment, and I understood what he was talking about. And I followed up with telling him, that I learned to read and understand more as I read the Bible. And this is me looking back, all these years later. And I could see the growth in my mind, and I could see the growth in my heart, in my character, and in my speech as well. And it's one of the astonishing things that I've found as it relates and pertains to the Bible, just providing a book that has some depth or some meaning to it when contemplated, when meditated upon, really just enriches the life of one that's taken it in. And I didn't know that. That wasn't my motivation going into it. But certainly within the scope of what I had believed, so long ago, what I was beginning to believe, and what I still believe today, I absolutely am indebted to, the people who blessed me with the Bible and said, from now on, you're stuck in a box. But read and go through these Bible studies and understand, the importance of what it means to have a relationship with God first and foremost, but also what it means to hear His words, and then of course adopt them as our own. I think I've heard you use the word assimilate. Yeah. Is that appropriate here?
I think so.
Absolutely.
I think so.
So to assimilate those to our daily lives, our character, and everything about us. And as a result, you hear comments like that man said at that speaking engagement.
So within the spiritual education and the personal development that comes with it, how important was it for spiritual leaders to educate you, because that's part of it too. Absolutely. If we were left up to our own devices, oh my gosh, we might be going all sorts of different directions, right? But that's how we learn, is from learning from those who know more than us.
Sure.
I mean, that's how everybody learns.
Absolutely.
That's how you learn a trade skill. That's how you learn things in academia. That's how you learn things about marriage. That's how you learn things about just the world. You just learn from people who know more than you do. And so how important was it for the availability of the types of teachers that you needed to enhance your spiritual education?
Yeah. I find motivation in the weirdest things. All right. You see me smirk there, but years ago I had this teacher. His name was Bishop Lorenzo Kelly. If you've ever heard my story in its entirety, I speak very highly of this man because he entered my life at a very crucial time. And he had this class called Maximizing Men. I believe that's the name of it. And what he would do is he would teach life principles based upon movies, Hollywood movies. And one such movie that he showed me that I had never seen was a story called The Count of Monte Cristo.
Yes. The Count of Monte Cristo.
Not Crisco. Remember?
Not Crisco.
Shawshank Redemption.
Another great prison movie, by the way.
Oh, man.
But no, definitely not The Count of Monte Cristo.
Yeah. So anyway, I'll leave that alone. So anyway, so he teaches life principles based upon movies, Hollywood movies, and in this movie, the story, or at least the way they depicted it in like the 2000 version, was Edmond Dantes. He was the main character. The main character basically got himself in a jam, and he was exiled and imprisoned and completely isolated. And he only seen the officers or the guards twice a day, or maybe once a day. I think it was once a day. And other than that, he was completely isolated. And he began to be in despair. He began to be hopeless. He began to be even suicidal. And one day, when he was just sitting there, and he had his belief in God, he had kind of just forsook that, and like, God is not real. And all of a sudden, this guy pops up from a block under his cell, like just pops up. And this was a guy that we would know to be this man named Priest, or at least that's what Edmond Dantes called him. And he started talking to him. He started talking to him and saying, hey, I miscalculated. I was escaping from here, but apparently I popped up in your cell. How about this? You're a stronger man. How about you help me dig and I'll help you learn? Kind of a good trade-off. But one of the things that he started with was he started with showing him how to read. But he explained it. He says, hey, we're being neglected. We only see the officers, the guards, once a day. The rest of the time, he said, we'll dig. And the rest of the time, we'll learn. And so he goes through and he starts showing them stuff and how to sword fight and teaching them economics and teaching them this and teaching them that. And he taught him how to read, but he started with this phrase. He said, so neglect becomes our ally. And he carved it on the wall, and it always stuck with me because it's like, that's it. That's exactly it. What the Department of Corrections is sometimes deficient in doing, and that's not a dig on the Department of Corrections. They can't. What the Department of Corrections is sometimes deficient in doing is made up, by and large, by the religious volunteers that go into the prison system. It's free education. And here, a chaplain, in my case, a few chaplains, in my case, just rallied around me and taught me everything that they understood and knew as it relates and pertains to the Word of God, as it relates and pertains to Jesus Christ, as it relates and pertains to biblical truth. Like, they dispensed that to me very freely. And in many respects, like, my life has somewhat paralleled this character by the name of Edmond Dantes, because only until I was, air quotes, educated, did I really begin to understand life. Did I really begin to understand, like, oh, okay, there's a bigger picture to this. It's not just little old me sitting in the cell feeling sad and sorry for myself. It's the larger picture, that life is just about this momentary experience that each and every one of us are experiencing at the same time, whether you're in prison or out of prison. Everybody gets 24 hours, 7 days a week.
Sometimes when we think about education, we have time frames around it, right? Mm-hmm. So maybe I have a year or two to get my GED done. Maybe I have 6 months to learn everything I can in this carpentry class. Mm-hmm. Maybe, whatever it is, right? But when it comes to spiritual education, for a person who subscribes to a faith-based belief system, mm-hmm. that education is absolutely a lifetime. It never ends, does it?
It doesn't.
And it can't end. We continue to evolve and to advance in our spiritual education.
Absolutely.
I'll just give a quick example of somebody who started off with no spiritual education. They just knew somehow in their heart that this is what they wanted to do. I won't use his real name, but you and I both know him as Big Mo. Mm-hmm. Big Mo came into prison in the mid-'90s, and he couldn't read. Mm-hmm. He was in his early to mid-30s, but he couldn't read. Mm-hmm. He came from a part of the country where education was not highlighted. He had his name, his real name, first name, tattooed on 6 or 7 different parts of his body, on all of his appendages, just in plain script. And I said, how come you have it like that? He said, that's in case they find parts of my body, then my mom can identify my body. That's a part of the country that he came from.
In America?
In America.
No kidding.
In this country.
Wow.
In this country, he came from a part of America where that was a legitimate thing. So on his arm, each of his arms, each of his legs, and his torso, he had his first name tattooed. So that in case they found parts of his body, his mom could identify, yep, that's my son's arm, or that's my son's leg. He had no education. He grew up on the streets, literally. He came to prison here in South Dakota, mm-hmm. and he couldn't read. Nor could he write. He had to have help filling out commissary slips to order his food and stuff. But he knew he wanted to learn, but he also knew that he wanted to believe in God. Mm-hmm. And from where he was from, Islam and Muslims were kind of a big thing. Mm-hmm. And so he knew that that's what he wanted to do. And so he went to the school in Jameson and said, hey, I want to learn how to read, but I want you to teach me from the Quran. So they said, okay, that's fine. So from the Quran, he learned to read English. Those were his first words, mm-hmm. that he learned how to read. He could look at the letters and sound out the words, and he could read. And by the time that I met him, he could read really well. Mm. And it all came from a desire for spiritual education. Mm-hmm. He wanted to evolve himself spiritually so that he could become a better man, mm-hmm. so that he could be the type of man that his mother could be proud of, that his siblings could be proud of, and that he could evolve himself beyond what the society from where he came from said that this is all that you can be.
Can I ask where he was from?
He's from Monroe, Louisiana.
Oh, man.
He showed me a newspaper from Monroe, Louisiana once. Mm-hmm. And they had a whole section. It was just a crime section. And for 7 consecutive pages, every crime listed was manslaughter, murder, manslaughter, murder. Every issue of that newspaper. That's how terrible it was down there for him.
Yeah. He was so gentle. Like, as I'm thinking about it and putting the
Yep.
pieces together as you're talking about it, it's like a very large man, but also very kind and gentle too.
Very soft spoken.
Yeah, very soft spoken.
You would never get that impression from him that that's where he was from, or he used spiritual education to evolve himself into this person that people admired, people respected, and where he felt better about himself through spiritual education and through academic education. He just wanted to learn. And, because of those reasons and many more, I really respected Big Mo a lot,
Absolutely.
and I'm sure you did too, and many others did.
I got to know him, respect him,
Yeah.
liked him. He lived like 10 cells down from me
Yeah.
for a while.
Yeah.
12 cells down from me for a while.
Yep. Shout out to Big Mo, by the way. So we've talked about academic education. We've talked about spiritual education. And so now let's talk very briefly here about vocational education. When we say vocational education, what we're talking about is when you get out of prison, you have to have a job. And I mean, that's not just a thing just because you're on parole. Like, that's just part of life. Like,
Right.
you got to work and you got to earn money. You got to pay the bills and put food on the table and clothes on your backs and provide for those people who depend on you.
Right.
And that means that you have to have a vocation. And so vocational education, if a person doesn't have any, you're really going to be limiting yourself to a financial bracket of your earning potential. So no GED, no formal vocational education, let's say trade skill education, or any sort of specific training for a specific type of job. You're probably going to be limiting yourself to $14 to $16 an hour,
Sure.
potentially.
Sure.
I know a guy that works in a restaurant in a really nice part of Sioux Falls, where most of the houses are north of $500,000. He works in a restaurant in those areas. He makes $16 an hour cooking food. And he struggles to pay the bills. And he doesn't have a GED. He doesn't have formal job training of any sort. He's just kind of stuck. And it's hard for him to get better paying jobs because he doesn't have that GED. But if a person who is in prison, who has an opportunity to have vocational training, sometimes that vocational training can be enough where an employer might say, you know what, you don't have your GED, but you know what you're doing.
Right.
And I can tell. So I'm going to take a chance on you, and I'm going to hire you. And I'll give you an example. A friend of mine did over 20 years in the women's prison up in Pierre. She went in when she was 17 and got out, I think, 6 years ago, something like that. And she's stayed out, done really well, but she didn't have a GED. She didn't have any job training. But what she did was she got a job in fleet management. And so she got to work on all of the state vehicles, vans, cars, all those kind of things. She learned how to be a mechanic.
Oh, wow.
And now she's a mechanic in a mechanic shop where people can bring their vehicles in and do oil changes, engine overhauls, transmission rebuilds. She knows how to do it all, and she knows her stuff. And it's from vocational training in prison.
That's fantastic.
It's amazing.
That's heartwarming if you really think about it. A story that potentially could have ended in, ignorance and just much like what you're saying, getting out and, hey, we're not going to take a chance on you or whatever, but just the opposite, somebody who's honed their craft and said, I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm looking at. I know how to diagnose. I know how to troubleshoot and all this other stuff,
Yeah, absolutely. And those types of opportunities are everywhere in prison. You can learn how to be a mechanic. You can learn how to weld. You can learn how to be a carpenter. You can learn how to frame houses. You can learn how to be a plumber. You can learn how to be an electrician. You can learn how to work on computers.
A CNC plasma cutter?
You can be a CNC plasma cutter. You can do lots of things, and you can learn so many things to set yourself up for not just a job, but you can set yourself up for a career. Mm-hmm. And I would say, even though it wasn't like formal training or formal education, you had a lot of education when it comes to computers and software and video technology and broadcasting. You learned all of those things during your time in prison, and that sets you up for some of the jobs that you've had since you've been out of prison. And those things have been hugely beneficial for you. Absolutely. You were able to have a feather in your cap. Absolutely. That allowed you to have something beyond just flipping burgers or pouring concrete or doing whatever, like a real actual career.
Right. Yeah, I cut my teeth in the church using some technology, and only until I got out and started to just venture into life and had seen a job at this tech company. Shout out to Sidewalk Technologies. A man took me under his wing and basically just helped me to understand the ins and outs of the technology that we were dealing with. And I'm forever grateful, for somebody taking a chance, like you said, taking a chance on me, even though I didn't have any formal education when it comes to
and
technology.
You didn't have any formal education, nor did you have a diploma, nor
I didn't have anything I could put on my resume other than just, hey, I seen you guys are hiring, like what do you think?
Right. But you were able to present yourself very well and say, hey, this is what I do know, and this is what my experience is. Mm-hmm. And that was enough to perk their ears a little bit and say, man, this guy carries himself really well. He speaks very well. He seems like he knows what he's doing. And even though he doesn't know exactly what we're doing, he has the foundation that we can teach him, and he can go as far as he wants to.
For sure.
Yeah.
Same push, same relevance. I learned also within the church, receiving spiritual education from the pastors that I had the privilege to be able to learn, sit under, serve, and walk alongside of while I was in the system. And a lot of my experience as it relates to the church and leadership and facilitating meetings, like group meetings and stuff, hosting services, writing curriculum, publishing a devotional, developing a discipleship, 18-week discipleship course, teaching on evangelism. A lot of things that the pastors taught me, I quickly developed a way, working with probably 6 or 7 other brothers, but quickly turn that into something that could be quote unquote, education or spiritual education for somebody else. I always wanted to maximize that. I didn't want to just be like, okay, cool, you taught me that, now I'm going to take it and run with it. I was always quick to say, I want someone else to learn this stuff as well. Because it afforded me an opportunity to be able to go and fill in at churches, to be able to teach Bible study, to tell my story, to work at a church, of all things. When I got out, I had some trepidation about they're not going to hire somebody like me. Like, I don't have all the things you're talking about, vocational. Like, I don't have the vocational skill in my pocket. So what's going to happen to me? And semi-concerned, but thank the Lord that a church, namely Freedom's Gate, picked me up and hired me, and it's been a blessing. I've been working with them for about 3 years, and it's just been an absolute blessing to see where God has taken me with the faithfulness that I once displayed in the system, not knowing like, hey, when I get out, they're not going to hire people like me because I don't have the vocational training, But to get out and see that it was different for me. And I'm always quick to say this. I said this in an interview. You've heard me say this before, but I don't want to just be regarded as the exception. I can't stand that. I can't stand when people are like, hey, well, that's because Steve had pastors to teach him. That's because Steve spent a lot of time with the volunteers or the people who were educated within the prison system. It's not that. I would rather much be regarded as an example. I would hold the same for you. Regard my brother as an example, not the exception, but as the example of what could take place, God willing, what could take place in one's life when they surrender themselves, submit, and say, I need something different in my life because the way that I'm doing it isn't cutting it. The understanding or the lack thereof isn't cutting it. I'm poised to learn something different.
Yeah, and I think, when you say poised to learn something different, that means oftentimes that you have to take an action, and that action is put yourself in a position to learn these things, right? So
the company you keep, we've talked about that.
We've talked about that, absolutely, the company you keep, but also like, hey, I'm going to sign up for this class. Hey, I'm going to see if I can get a job in this shop so that I can learn these things. As you and I both know, and as all of our viewers and our listeners know too, it's not about what you know. Sometimes it is, but it's not always about what you know. It's who you know. And if you can network a little bit and get to know folks, then you can say, hey, can you get me into this class? Hey, can you get me into this shop so that I can learn these things? And I got to give a lot of credit to a lot of people that I knew that were able to get me into different trades while I was in prison. I learned how to sew. I could sit at a sewing machine and sew the living daylights out of, mattress covers and wheelchair upholstery and, all sorts of different things. I learned how to operate press brakes. I learned how to become a carpenter and build cabinets.
How many license plates did you make in your time? Roughly.
Maybe, I don't know, thousands, right? For anybody who doesn't know, every license plate in the state of South Dakota gets made within the South Dakota State Penitentiary here in Sioux Falls. Every single it's a stereotypical prison job, right? Stamping license plates. They're not stamped anymore.
Nope.
That's not a thing. I was there during that transition when they went away from stamping and went to simply creating a sticker and putting it onto a roll of aluminum.
That's it.
That's it.
That's all
it is now. But back then, when we were still stamping, it was a lot of work. You had one guy on one side of the press,
and a punch.
One guy on the other side. One guy was feeding plates. The other guy was changing dies.
Excuse me, hammer and a punch. Tink, tink, tink.
Look, I'm not that old. But, I learned all these things. And eventually that put me in a position to be able to learn how to weld in a welding shop. I didn't know how to weld. I just saw an opportunity. And I was given that opportunity. I learned, started off doing easy things. And then when we talk about putting yourself in a position to take advantage of something, in the welding shop that I was working in, there was 3 shifts: morning, afternoon, and evening. Evening shift was only like an hour and a half. So I would work morning and afternoon shift, and I would volunteer with no pay. I wouldn't punch in. I would just come out during 3rd shift and I would learn how to weld thicker pieces, thicker components, heavier welding, because I was just doing very light gauge stuff. And so I was doing it for no pay. I just wanted to learn. And because I was doing that and saying, no, I don't want to take any money, I just want to learn, that put me in a position so that when a position did come available to weld that heavier stuff, I got the first shot at it. And then I excelled at that. And then they took notice. And then when they bought a CNC plasma cutter, they passed over a lot of other guys. They said, we want you to run this machine. And that's what really started this career of plasma cutting, of CAD drawing, of graphic design, all those things associated with that. That's what started it over 15 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And that led to other jobs in different facilities, working in the metal shops, welding. And then now it's what I do for a living. I weld, I run a CNC plasma cutter, I do graphic design. I'm getting ready to create a showroom sign for the largest trucking freight company in South Dakota.
Oh, man, look out.
8-foot by 6-foot sign for their showroom. It's going to be amazing. But all that came from prison.
Yeah.
And like you, I didn't have a certificate. I didn't have a diploma. I didn't have anything to back it up except for some pictures and my word. And my employer said, you know what? It sounds like you know what you're talking about. You do have your GED. I'm going to hire you.
Right.
And now I have not just a job, but I have a career. And as you said, it's not, oh, look at what Ryan can do, look at what Steve can do. And that's just exclusive to me and you. Like we're just the examples of the potentiality of what can be available for people who choose to become educated, but also choose to put themselves in situations in order to take advantage of them.
That's right.
Right. So the last type of education that we're going to talk about today, and we could sit here and talk about this stuff for hours, right? But I don't think America wants to hear us talk for too much longer. But what we're going to talk about for this last one is really just like worldly education. And what I mean by that is, and I think what we mean by that is just general knowledge. Oftentimes in prison, it's so easy to hang around friends, to, socialize, to do whatever. And the topics of conversation are very, very narrow. It's what's happening in the day hall, what's the new commissary item, what's the spread on the Super Bowl, what's all these things, right? But it's so narrow.
Right.
Nobody's talking about what's on the news, what they learned from an educational program on television. Nobody's going beyond their comfort zone and associating with people who do have that formal education. I had a roommate who was hugely influential on me because he was formally educated. He did go to college. He lived a full life before coming to prison. He didn't come to prison until he was in his mid-30s. And he had a very successful career. And so I didn't know anything about banking, about finances, about this, about that, or whatever, and just learning from it just through conversations. And I didn't limit myself to what was going on in the day hall, what was going on in the cell hall, what was going on at the job sites, what was going on with sports. Like, I just broadened my conversations and just learned about stuff that just went on in the world.
Right.
And when you do that, you're able...
Like the migration of the butterflies.
Like the migration of the monarch butterflies.
Don't get into it.
I won't get into it, but folks, Google the migration of the monarch butterflies and how they're able to do what they're doing. It's amazing, right? But when you're able to have this type of worldly education, like how do politics work? How does our economic system work? How does our social structure work? How do other countries do things? Where do you go to get insurance on your car?
Right.
You know, just like these things that you just kind of have to know, but other things that just enrich your mind.
Right.
So now, when you get out of prison and you start talking to people, associating with people, going out in social circles, you can keep up with conversations.
Sure.
When you're able to do that, you can feel like you're more included. You're not feeling like an outsider.
Right.
When you're not able to keep up with conversations that have just general knowledge associated with them,
right,
because you just don't know that stuff, you feel out of place. And then that inhibits you from talking to people, expanding your network, putting yourself in situations for your advantage. It has a lot of implications. And so gaining worldly knowledge is very, very important.
I remember one time we went to this car show, and this guy probably had, I don't know, a couple $1 million worth of cars. But there was only like 2 or 3 cars there. So really nice cars. And a friend of mine who is a mechanic and I were standing there talking with him. And I could already tell, like, I can't hold a flame, you know, in terms of mechanic talk. And so I introduced my friend as my mechanic, you know. And just in doing that and just kind of backing off and watching these guys talk back and forth about stuff I really don't understand, but just to hear them and to hear the excitement in my friend's voice was kind of cool to see, you know. But to your point, just having that understanding, like knowing that even though he was incarcerated for quite some time, he honed his craft mechanically and was able to keep up with this guy who has these supercars standing right there, and they're just talking about wrenching, turning wrenches, you know, stuff I don't understand and know, but my friend did. And like I'm saying, to your point, just knowing that he could stand in that arena and feel relevant, you know, versus me trying to stand in that arena and try to, you know.
Right.
I always think about that. I think about it a lot.
You know, I'll just use a quick example, you know, for me. You know, I didn't really receive like a lot of like financial education, like how finances work or how money works. I think I took a 2-day class. I think is all I took. I don't remember the name of it. Maybe it was like Money Matters or whatever it was. Right.
It wasn't credit where credit's due, right?
It was credit where credit's due. Thank you very much. Credit where credit's due. Well, I didn't know anything about credit.
Yeah.
I had never talked to anybody about credit. I didn't really know what credit was. And it wasn't until I got out and like I started hanging around people, particularly at my job, who were talking about things that I just didn't understand. I really felt out of place. But I had to learn these things really quickly. What is credit? How does it work? How do I build my credit? How do I build my credit score? What's static credit? What's revolving credit? Do I need one or both in order to increase my credit score? How do I do that? What can I use a good credit score for?
So you never went and borrowed anything in prison?
I mean, I did, but I didn't understand exactly what that was. By the way, I had good credit.
The same system. Yeah, this is the same system.
It's the same system, but I didn't know.
It's weird. Like I see that today because I'm like sitting there looking at my credit score and it's like, I feel like I'm good for it.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like I could do this, but this system out here doesn't know me. That system in there did.
Correct.
You know, so it's like, how does that work?
Right. But like.
It works the same. That's all I'm saying.
It does work the same. But like once I started like doing that for myself with the guidance and advice from people who knew more than I did and who understood that I just didn't know.
Right.
Then I could start keeping up with their conversations when it came to finances and money and how money works and all these other kind of things. So then I didn't feel out of place anymore. Now I felt more included, which then just makes me feel better, right? So having this worldly knowledge, not only does it just benefit you because of the knowledge that you have, but it just makes you feel a little bit better. It boosts your self-esteem.
Right.
And sometimes that's just what somebody needs to get over the hump of, I'm not going to restrict myself to this bubble of what society says that I can be, or this is all that I can be,
Right.
because I was in prison, because I committed a crime, because I have a felony on my record. Sometimes we think that. Who's going to hire me because I have a felony, right? You mentioned that earlier.
Yeah.
But when you have confidence in yourself, because maybe you took a training class in prison, because you received spiritual education, because you gained some worldly knowledge, now you just feel more confident about yourself, and you can put yourself in situations in order to succeed. So education within the prison system is so important.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, for you and I, obviously, it paid off in spades with not only our careers, but also who we became as men.
Right.
And I think what we would like to do as far as like encouraging our listeners and our viewers is, if you have a loved one or know somebody who is in prison, just really encourage them to dip their toes into education. It's so, so important. And the thing is, it's all available. It's all for free. It doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't cost you anything, but it pays back everything.
Well said.
Right? So really encourage those men and women that who are in prison to seek out education. Academic education, spiritual education, worldly education, and vocational education. Those four, if you just start with those four things, they'll benefit a lot, and they can have the same measure, if not a greater measure of success as what men like Steve and I have had, because we know plenty of guys who have had lots of success after they've gotten out of prison. It's not just me and Steve. It's plenty of guys.
I know of a guy who's set to retire at the age of 40, and he and his wife want to travel the world, and he has the means to do it.
And he was in prison.
And he was in prison. And he invested wisely while he was in prison with just the little bit of money that he had, and not knowing that he had, from what I understand, an inheritance on the outside that was just making him money. So he understood at a smaller level, and he invested in terms of like savings and starting to figure out, the stock market and stuff. Mm-hmm. I think it's specific area of the stock market. But when he got out, then he understood it at a bigger level. So when he inherited more money, then he just put that into the system that he understood, and it paid off in dividends for him.
And it's because he became educated.
Because he became educated. He was educated before he went in. He's probably one of the smarter men that I know. But he's an inspiration.
Yeah.
Just to know that type of success is possible. That a person can come from that environment and be quote unquote successful on the outside. Like he's got a wife and he's got a kid, and they own their own home and they own their own cars, like he's doing well, and he's very grounded. He stays like very grounded, very humble, just a very nice, kind man.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So, as I said, for our listeners and our viewers, if you know somebody who is incarcerated, whether that's a friend or a loved one, just really encourage them to seek out education in whatever way that they possibly can. It'll only benefit them in the end. So seek out those means of education, encourage them, uplift them, and, God willing, they'll have a measure of success, not only while they're in prison, but certainly after they get out of prison as well. So that's all for this episode of Unconfined Conversations with Ryan and Steve. Check us out on all of our social media platforms. We're on Facebook, We're on, what else are we on? YouTube. Check us out on YouTube. And now you can check us out on TikTok. So watch for new TikToks from Unconfined Conversations.
Is that where you do the dancing? So you're like dance and introduce our
There will be, I can't guarantee that there will be dancing. America, if there's dancing involved, I don't know that I should be the one doing it.
You were an amazing dancer. I've seen you dancing.
Oh, okay.
At a brother's wedding.
Also, check us out on music platforms such as Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Amazon Music. Also, make sure to like and subscribe to all of our channels and share Unconfined Conversations with all of those who you know, friends, family, and your neighbors. The more that the word gets out there, the more people can have more types of unconfined conversations in their homes and in their communities. So for Steve and I, thank you for watching Unconfined Conversations, and we'll see you next time.